You are watching SABC News live from Johannesburg. Your headlines this hour. The Lebombo border post partially opened following talks between South African and Mozambican authorities.
And much of this is happening as a result of reckless and negligent actions on the part of unscrupulous spaza shops.
President Cyril Ramaphosa says some owners of spaza shops have been reckless and negligent, this as incidents of suspected food poisoning rise in the country. And US President-elect Donald Trump putting together his new team as federal prosecutors grapple with unprecedented circumstance of his impending return to the White House. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us here at Week in Review, live from our studio in Johannesburg. For the next 2 hours, we will review some of the biggest stories of the week. My name is Margaret Matabe. You can participate, share your comments or ask your questions by giving us a call here in studio on 011-714-0680 or 81 or 82. It's wonderful to have you with us. Unemployment, water challenges, lack of decent housing and crime are just some of the issues that were raised by residents of Umgababa during the District Development Model imbizo hosted by President Cyril Ramaphosa. District development models are government's medium to long-term frameworks for integrated development.
The President's District Development imbizo aimed at engaging with residents on issues affecting them. It's envisaged that through this, government will be able to respond effectively. The residents of Mkababa, like the rest of the country, are faced with a plethora of challenges, including severe water shortages, crime and unemployment, especially amongst the youth. From one speaker to another, residents raised concerns about challenges facing their respective communities. She says those of us who are part of the EPWP program are now unemployed. We have been working as temporary workers for the past 10 years. Now our children are suffering. Aggrieved teachers also used the opportunity to bring before the President's attention critical issues affecting the education sector in KwaZulu-Natal. For the past week, SATU members have been protesting, among other issues, the delayed payment of the norms and standard that assist in the daily running of schools.
The budget cuts, and then we're asking this question. If you cut the budget, there are education, but in the Constitution you still declare it as a basic human right. Also you are key.
Education Minister Siviwe Kwahube reiterated her department's commitment to resolving the challenges faced by learners and teachers in the province. KwaZulu-Natal has the highest number of learners in the country. On water challenges, government considered that many areas are still experiencing water shortages. She says we are building major dams, particularly in the area of eThekwini. We have a project in Umkomazi that will help us address water challenges here. President Ramaphosa also said government was looking into incidents of food poisoning that have resulted in the deaths of children.
And much of this is happening as a result of reckless and negligent actions on the part of unscrupulous spaza shops. They are keeping dangerous chemicals on premises where they are selling food. And the police have already arrested some people in this regard. And at the government level, our departments are seized with this matter. Department of Kokta, Minister Fedusa is working on this, and the proclamation that regulate spaza shops The licensing of spaza shops has been approved.
Simpiwe Makanya, SABC News, Mkababa.
Toxicologists say the lethal poisons from the organophosphate chemical are not supposed to be used by households. This after Minister of Health Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi announced that all 6 Naledi children who passed away last month after eating contaminated snacks died as a result of a chemical identified as an organophosphate. Authorities are still stumped over how these illegal and harmful pesticides make their way into townships.
Organophosphate, a highly toxic pesticide registered for agricultural use to treat crops such as corn, grain and sugar beets, but it is fatal if swallowed, inhaled or absorbed through direct skin contact. Children become the most vulnerable to this poison because they have smaller bodies, and if given a dose of this pesticide, it kills.
Very poisonous, especially to young people as well, and we really need to look out for this. Usually as well, the poisonings are unintentional. It's not an intentional poisoning except when we are looking at suicidal cases.
Symptoms include headache, dizziness, vomiting and diarrhea.
Sure, it's got quite a broad spectrum of effects that it can have. It can have central nervous system effects, which is usually the most common effect that it has, and that is headaches, seizures, you can lose consciousness, and also you can even go into a coma.
Manufactured or formulated. Toxicologists say the chemical is also illegal in other countries.
We don't manufacture any pesticides here. We do what's called formulation. So we import all the active ingredients, so all the organophosphates, if it's a turbophos or methimidofos or chlorpyrifos, all of those are imported, and then we would add other ingredients to it here in South Africa and formulate the products.
The Department of Agriculture says it's time for them to step up consumer awareness campaigns.
Food safety is not something that we can compromise. There is already legislation in place that monitors, be it meat products and other commodities, but there certainly needs to be a more rigorous regulation of informal outlets as well as outlets that are retailing, not just in townships, even be it in CBD areas and others.
Illegal pesticides are extremely dangerous, and the poor handling of these toxic substances has led to a tragic wave of child deaths, especially in Gauteng. Toxicologists have warned that individuals handling these chemicals should wear proper protective gear for safety. But while prevention is better than cure, the growing question from frustrated communities and helpless parents is government doing enough to keep their children safe from these illegal poisons? Lerato Makula, SABC News in Johannesburg.
Meanwhile, there has been mixed reactions from the community at large, especially parents, after the Gauteng Education Department decided to instruct all schools to suspend the sale of food within and around school premises until further notice. The department says the decision was informed by the recent and alarming increase in incidents of foodborne illnesses affecting learners across various schools in the province.
Community members in Katlehong says the recent incidents of foodborne illnesses is a cause for concern.
In my opinion, I don't wish for the government to close food for the children. The important thing here is that some people are struggling out there, and what is painful is that children will go to school and learn on an empty stomach. I think the government should check where the products are being made, like a firm to check to see what actually goes on there, because these chips are not only in Katlehong but all over the country, so they should go and check.
The National School Governing Body Association concurs with the decision by Gauteng Education to immediately suspend food sales in and around the school premises. The Secretary General of the association says they need to find the root cause of the foodborne illness.
We are in a war. Our children are dying every day. So I believe that circular will work. We suspend our vendors in our schools until this problem is solved. We are sorry that really these vendors are able to put bread on the table. However, this time they will not be able to put the bread on the table because we really have to agree with the department to suspend this so that we know the root and the cause of this poisoning of food and the purpose and all those things.
Rodent Education says this would require strict compliance, and they have officials on the ground to enforce strict compliance.
Our officials are on the ground. We have IDSOs. Those are officials that are responsible to manage schools. Though an IDSO will be responsible for probably 4 to 5 schools. So they will be in a position to conduct some inspection and check whether is the school, are they complying to our memo. But we've called upon SGBs, school management, to make sure that they are in compliance.
The department has issued a stern warning to those SGB members who might not comply with the recent order, saying that they will face the risk of being banned. Schools in the province have started to issue letters to parents letting them know of the latest decision by the department. Calvin Dludla, SABC News, Katlehong.
Mikey doesn't want big biceps this summer, he wants big savings.
Mikey!
Was your phone call with Outsurance on steroids?
It was much faster. These guys are super fast, they're very helpful.
How much are you saving?
My bank account is flexing. I'm saving 171 Rand per month.
Outsurance is the best insurer in South Africa. How do you feel?
I feel I've got the muscle of Outsurance totally behind me.
You always get something out. Go to outsurance.co.za for a 10-minute car insurance quote that could save you thousands.
Tony Yengeni said that their issue is not so much that he didn't violate the constitution, but it's more about the lack of consistency from the ANC. How do you strike the balance? Because on the one hand, you want the US to know how much we appreciate our trade relations, we appreciate being part of this AGOA deal, but on the other hand, we don't want to give them an impression that we want them to choose who South Africa must be friends with. The electoral performance in the province has been declining over time, so the writing has always been on the wall. So is it the voters who've rejected the ANC, or is the ANC's poor performance because there wasn't a rigorous campaign in the province? Because you are so passionate about or against the DA-ANC coalition, what happens if the ANC gets into that coalition? What happens to your relationship with the party? I still maintain that that's a relevant question to ask.
Thank you for staying with us here at the Week in Review. Now to this. Former Economic Freedom Fighters chairperson, Advocate Mpofu, is now a fully fledged Umkhonto weSizwe party member. Mpofu made the announcement in an exclusive interview with SABC News during the week. Mpofu joined what was then the third largest party upon its formation in 2013 and served as chairperson of the party for 5 years from 2014. Mpofu's departure marks another blow for the Red Berets in a series of membership exodus. In a surprise move in August, former EFF Deputy President Floyd Shivambu left the party also to join the MK party.
After a lot of soul searching, I've taken a decision that I will be joining MK.
Another senior EFF member championship to join the Umkhonto weSizwe party.
I'm joining MK because I believe that it is the vehicle through which we will achieve the much needed black and progressive unity.
The South African lawyer, former businessman and former national chairperson of the Red Berets, Mpofu, is following in the footsteps of former EFF Deputy President Floyd Shivambu.
I am totally convinced that the vehicle that will galvanize all of us together in a quicker fashion is Umkhonto weSizwe.
Mpofu has also revealed that he had played a central role in the formation of MK Party whilst a member of the Economic Freedom Fighters.
Something that your viewers might not know is that there was a time when former President Zuma and I were the only people who knew about this project of the formation of MK, because we had discussed after the 2022 conference of the ANC very in depth as to what needs to be done.
Mpofu, just like Shivambu, left the Red Berets after his membership became due for renewal. As to whether he told EFF President Julius Malema, this was his response.
The question, have you informed the leadership of the EFF, particularly Julius Malema? Given that the nature of relations, I mean, you've always been with them together. That's the reason why I'm asking.
No, I haven't, to be fair, and I have tried to reach out to him. But, you know, it's not, there's no need to inform anyone at any particular time.
Malema has meanwhile reacted to the news that Mpofu has joined the MK Party, and already a welcome from some who have left the EFF before him. The question is this the beginning of the end for Malema and the EFF, or will they bounce back like they did before?
Comrades, when you lose some votes, you are going to lose some friends. I've been where I am today. That which you see, I've seen it before. That those who were very close to me, I woke up one day, they were nowhere to be found. That those who betrayed me today were the closest after my wife to my glass of water. I now ask myself, what if these people poisoned me? Because every time I stood up to go to a bathroom, I gave over my glass to them. That's how much close these people were to me. But let me tell you, I will never lose confidence on humanity.
Ntantla Khatlani, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Now, staying on that story and joining us for more on this is political analyst Prof. Lesiva Defo. Prof, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. It is clear that EFF's loss continues to be Umkhonto weSizwe's gain. What is at play here? Some are saying this has always been a plan for both parties to eventually merge. What do you think is going on here?
I'm not sure about merging at last. Greetings to the viewers and listeners. I'm not sure about that one. I don't think voluntarily and willingly Malema would surrender the leadership of his party. I don't think he's of that making or is that character. Whatever the challenges he faces, I think he might be the last man still standing. We have seen UDM and other parties. Because at one level, it is their party, regardless of what other people want to say. Remember, when Machiro, the lady from Mpumalanga, I think, left, she was reminded that, yes, you may, if you please, because you are not invited. This is a voluntary organization. So it's my organization, and I didn't invite you guys, and if you want to leave, so be it.
Would you call this, Prof, some sort of betrayal? As he mentioned in that clip that you just saw now, he mentions that when you lose some votes, you're going to lose some friends, and there would obviously be some form of betrayal in between. Do you see it as some form of betrayal?
Betrayal by who and to which end? Because at the end of the day, all is said and done, you all join. because there are principles and values and a vision to which you subscribe. It might fade or wither away with time. And then you say, is it still worth it? Or do I step aside and continue with other things under the sun? So be it, right? Now, that said, the language of betrayal for me is not really relevant, but in politics, the intimacy that there is based on certain things that may not necessarily be sustainable. But what I would be more keen to talk about is why the EFF is where it is today, and the people are behaving in the manner they do. That for me is very critical for him, and even those who are still staying in the party. Because you cannot build a party based on disrespect and vulgar, abusive and divisive language. The society we want to build doesn't resonate with the language spoken by the EFF in general. It's very divisive, it's very abrasive, it's contrary to the values that undergird the national constitution, reconciliation, social cohesion, and nation building. Number two, he brought it to himself. Remember when he dissolved, right? Provincial structures like in Limpopo, saying they are not performing. In KwaZulu-Natal, here it's a man, he's a member of parliament. He could not fill in a bus with the people from his area because in the main are poor, they could not afford to pay. That fellow was kicked out. And I said it then, one day there will be a price to pay for the way that fellow was treated. And indeed, KwaZulu-Natal responded accordingly. Now, then there is also this thing in my view, the branding. You know, the clothing, the branding that they have, red beret every day, that's fine. But I'm sure there are days when people would just want to feel different. And I think they subscribe to it is because it's almost what the emperor wants. And their views are less material when it comes to certain things. You came to me on my terms, and if you cannot subscribe to them or you think you have outlived them, the door is open.
Interesting, Prof. But what do you think of the quality of EFF members who flock to the MKP? What does this tell us about their character?
Yeah, I've always struggled with the caliber of the people that support the EFF. Young folks, employed or unemployed, many unemployed and unemployable. That's where the greatest support and appeal came from. In the first 5 years, the EFF had an appeal to the middle class. But I've seen them walk away because they found the language of the leader repulsive and dictatorial tendencies beginning to creep in. But those were people, men and women who were employed, who were just saying that they could associate with. They didn't want anything other than to be a party, to support a party that they thought could represent them. So they walked away. Now, you have the first people to leave, and we are not talking about. Remember Gadi, why did he leave? How did Mpofu lose the chairmanship? How did Machiro leave? The people who founded the party, where did they find themselves? The then spokesperson, how was he received? How was he maybe demoted, if I may use the word? Who is the honorable? Where is the honorable Ngozi? Right? Reduced in quotes and with due respect, a so-called ice boy. I know he's a smart fellow, and that appellations couldn't have said well with him. And he must have interrogated himself but how did I get to this point that I could be described as is? And how could I extricate myself from this? And I'm sure he's agonizing a lot about the future.
And staying with those who are leaving to join specifically the Umkhonto weSizwe Party, Prof, could this be an indication that those who are leaving really have lost confidence in the party leader, Malema himself?
Oh, yes. I think his leadership style is alienating, especially to those who are intellectually independent. those who have the courage of their conviction. Not in the age we live. The big man syndrome has had its day in Africa, but not now, especially in South Africa, where people are fairly politically literate. And that's how he lost the support of the middle class. And I remember saying quite back that I can see the beginning of the downfall. And people said, but they filled the stadium. I said, the stadiumology, or I can feel a bigger stadium than yours, doesn't tell me much. And it was in Limpopo where he lost more support, despite the stadium being overflowing. And he himself went out of his way to say, oh, you come by, get our food and our t-shirts, and when you are done, Tina Sefuna Ikongolos. It was a telling confession that whatever we are trying, but we don't reach them spiritually, emotionally, and politically.
Prof, I would like you to hold it there. We have a caller on the line that's given from Mtata. Good afternoon to you. What do you have to say about this development?
Yes, madam. The problem is I want to speak about Julius. The problem I see that in the EFF, if Julius Malema can just not take the decision with his own and take the decision with the leadership. For instance, he lost the vote last time, and then say that when I was listening on TV, it's not going anywhere. In other day, he said on the TV as well, if Floyd can, I'm still reminded, you know.
All right, Given, thanks so much for that take. Prof, I just want to come back to you. Given raising a very important point here to say that, the utterances of Julius Malema saying that he definitely is not going anywhere. Could that be one of the factors that seem to be pushing some of the senior members out of the party?
Look, we live in the real world. There are bills to be paid. You just don't work away not knowing where the next meal will come from. Hence, he's saying to you and me that I can see them, look them in the face, and I know they're preparing for their way out. They are just waiting at the right moment. And I'm sure every human being, rational being, would look at that way, that there are other things to be considered before one takes a plunge. But I also find his comments are immensely regrettable. You don't say as a leader, I know that in our midst, there are those who are going to leave. There are those who are going to betray me. It's almost like you are daring them. Right? A leader at this juncture would try to be conciliatory, would try to rally around the troops and say the challenge is notwithstanding, let's pull together. But when you are almost poking their faces and saying, I know you are about to leave, that is almost like saying, I don't care. I'll remain the last man standing. And he does say that, although not in so many words.
Of course, he has already indicated as well, Prof, that he's just going to be unfazed by these developments. But do you see him perhaps joining the MKP after all these, or even the EFF party working together with the Mkondo Wesize party?
Yeah, working together, that's fine. However we define that, however tenuous the relationship might be, I think it would still be there, right? He may end up with 5-10 people, like we saw some parties. I alluded to the MDC, right? It had 1 or 2 seats from and cope what happened, and so on. It will take time until we see the end of the EFF, or it can be reborn one way or another. And if maybe you push me, if it were to fold, he could go back to the ANC or to the MK party. But I'm inclined towards MK party because it does look like it's a formidable force in the making that people should begin to think about it challenge him for power. It may not be in the next election, but if they continue on this trajectory, lo and behold, there is trouble coming for the ANC.
Indeed. Prof, again, I would like you to hold it there. There's Temba on the line from KZN. Temba, you are welcome to Week in Review. Just talk to us. What do you make of this development?
Yeah, I think we are exaggerating things. I see these leaders, Abba Floyd, and this guy, lawyer, who they are opportunists. You know what I mean? Because
Temba, sorry to interrupt, Temba. Could you just turn down the volume of your TV set there so that we could hear you clearly? Once you've done that, then you can continue, please.
No, it's off. It's off, really. It's off.
All right. Go ahead. All right.
It's off. Yes. What I'm trying to say is, I see this Mpofu and Floyd as an opportunist because, if they say political ideology of MK and EFF are similar, so what is the reason for them just to leave EFF to MK? I see, as a political opportunist who does not know what to, work hard to promote their political organization. Because, I don't see EFF, as a political party that has done bad in terms of, promoting their ideologies. But why do they leave? Why can't they assist? Especially Floyd. Floyd was a person who formed the organization. How could you form your organization and say, let me just go back and go to other political organizations? You know what I mean? He's a failure. You know what I'm saying? You can't have you can't create your concept. You know what I mean, and fail to grow your concept and go to other political party in a hope that you'll grow that. It's an opportunity. If political ideologies are the same, so why do they move? You know what I'm saying?
Okay, Temba, in your view, sorry to interrupt there, what do you think the party should do to hold on to the senior, especially senior members that we keep seeing them leaving the party, or even those who are left behind? What do you think the party should do to keep them?
Those I see these guys as an political opportunist. You know what I'm saying? Mina ngingati umalima could ignore that. You know what I'm saying? Keep on growing his political party. But avoid to talk about things that will endanger the party, especially border issue. You know what I'm saying? Those things, those occurrences, the members on the ground lose faith on him. You know what I'm saying? So if you can correct it, you know what I'm saying? Or if someone
yeah. All right. I think, Temba, we got the gist of what you had to say there. Thanks so much. That's Temba from KwaZulu-Natal. Prof, coming back to you, I don't know if you got the gist of what Temba is saying here, talking about political opportunists in terms of these developments that are happening at the EFF. Is that what you agree with?
I would ask Temba, does he recall a single day where Malema shared a public platform with Floyd? Even when he was unwell, he would still want to continue to talk by himself because it was his grand occasion. He didn't want to share the moment. You can remember that fateful day when he wasn't well, and he ought not to have done that. And that speaks to the character and the caliber of the person he is. And when people begin to interrogate that, they say, oh no, It cannot be. Themba is also talking about ideology. I'm a senior student of philosophy. I'm one of those who say we have witnessed the end of ideology in the past 10, 20 years. This is the age of pragmatism. You can't tell, is China socialist democrat or not? Right? Is Russia socialist democrat or communism? Those appellations, that nomenclature is anachronistic and has no longer much relevance. I can hear people in the SACP still talking about those archaic terminology, archaic nomenclature. People want bread and butter up and place, they don't want slogans.
Prof, thanks so much indeed. Interesting developments that we'll be keeping close watch. Thanks so much for sharing your thoughts with us. That was political analyst Prof. Nesiva. Indeed, all eyes will arguably be on the EFF's third national conference to elect new leadership in mid-December in Johannesburg, especially following the departure of its former Deputy President Floyd Shivambu, as well as the most recent exit by now former chairperson, Advocate Dali Mpofu. Do stay with us. We'll be right back after this short break. Welcome back to the Week in Review. Today we tackle a contentious issue. Foreign nationals working as scooter drivers in South Africa's food delivery industry. Allegations of biased hiring practices have sparked heated debates. That's the reality faced by many foreign national scooter drivers in South Africa. But what do South Africans think? Let's go to the streets where our producer Sandy Letangani met with scooter drivers and compiled this insert.
In South Africa's bustling cities, food delivery services have become essential to modern life. But behind the convenience, a controversy brews. Allegations of biased hiring practices have surfaced, suggesting that foreign nationals are being favored over local South Africans. Meet two scooter drivers, foreign nationals working in South Africa's delivery industry, who share their stories with us.
I don't really feel like I can say anything about it because that's their opinion. You get me? Because it's one of those things where you can say that we're taking your jobs, but we're actually not taking your jobs because they think that this is a job that we have, but this, how can I explain it? We practically independent contractors. So if we work, we get paid. If we don't work, we don't get paid.
They share their personal stories of struggle and resilience.
I don't have a lot to say about that, but I think that's not true. Yeah. Because when we go to CMC, we find a lot of South Africans are there, and some South Africans they say that, but they say that we don't we take works from them, but it's not about that. They don't like this work.
As allegations of biased hiring practices continue to surface, concerns about safety and regulation take center stage.
To curb this problem, I would very much like to see a bigger involvement from government. We are sitting with a problem, and in the end, the only real difference that can be made is if government get behind this and help us to kind of get riders to see the risk in their decision making, the risk in their deciding to take chances, deciding to cut corners, deciding to cut through traffic, deciding not to clip the helmet up, deciding not to ride the proper riding gear. I mean, at one stage, we were slammed if you were caught driving with a phone against your head. I don't see that done anymore. So, and also, if you don't have a safety belt on, you get a fine for that. So I almost want to stir the pot and say, why can't we be fined if we are caught with a motorcycle helmet that doesn't have a visor, doesn't adhere to the standards of helmets that are coming into South Africa?
He raises concerns about licensing and training.
License issues that's definitely very real. We've seen and we've done our own investigations over the last 2 years when this thing starts sticking its head out to find out if how many of these riders are compliant with local licensing and traffic laws, and it's very much concerning. We have a number of these riders, and yes, there are some other influencers who are making figures available on social media, and I must say that it's easy to be a keyboard warrior if you don't have your facts straight. So not to go into that, but it's very real that there are quite a few riders that are not properly licensed for South African roads, road regulations and traffic laws.
The union representative we spoke to agrees, emphasizing the need for stricter regulations.
The discrimination of locals in that industry, and it is linked with non-compliant and flagrant disregard for labor rights, for labor standards, and all of that. And the solution is obviously to ensure that we enforce that. So we have been, of course, making demands, for instance, for government to reverse the austerity measures that have crippled the labor and the inspectorate for compliance and enforcement, to ensure that there's monitoring and there's enforcement of rights, and especially making sure that the workers are protected. But let's be honest about it. We have absolutely no faith that the government is going to address that.
Rodent, a South African scooter driver, offers a different perspective.
Most of the guys, even in my hood, don't want to be motorbike drivers, or they don't want to be seen as stereotypical like Bovela, because people are calling us names out here.
Rodriguez's experience challenges the narrative that foreign nationals steal South African jobs.
I would simply say to them, if they want to work, they must just go and apply like everyone else. Because we're in shortage. Even internships and learnerships were being handed out to South Africans. But I don't think it took the effect that was desired, because we didn't see much internship guys. Like at the store, we only had 2 people who came from under learnerships, and learnerships were being given to South Africans. But no one, literally no one, or a small percentage showed up. So it shows that people are not interested in doing this job.
Their stories raise important questions about hiring practices and regulations in South Africa's delivery industry. Are foreign nationals being unfairly favored, and at what cost to local employment opportunities?
Sandile Hlangani there with that insightful report. Thank you so much indeed. Now let's delve deeper into this complex issue, and to help me unpack it, we are joined by Ashley Benjamin from Fedusa. Mr. Benjamin, thank you so much for your time. Let's expand on this, please. What steps is the union taking to address concerns about foreign national employment, as you've seen in that report?
Thank you to you. Good afternoon, and good afternoon to the viewers. Yes, from Fedusa's side, we acknowledge that this has become a real problem in our society. We believe that there is a biasness towards employing foreign locals instead of South African labor. There has been many allegations of biasness towards foreign labor. Some of the reports that surfaced alleges that approximately the Checkers 6060 app employs approximately 10,000 motorbike drivers who deliver these goods to households, and of that, almost 9,900 is foreign locals. If that has to be true, which means almost 99% of employees participating in that scheme is foreigners. I mean, that is totally unacceptable. If you look at our current unemployment rate in South Africa, standing at almost 33%, but if one goes further into youth unemployment, it's almost for 46%. So it is a disaster, it's a crisis, and it should be addressed. So there's a lot of allegations. Some allege, as I've seen in the inserts, that they earn very low salaries and approximately 7,600 per month, and they have to cover their fuel expenses and also the motorbike rentals. Others are saying they earn a good salary. But I think the problem is with the concept that in particular Shoprite Checkers is using, which we called independent contractors, whereby you work for a company but you're not considered as an employee. Therefore, you can't attract all the rights and benefits of being a worker under the labor laws of South Africa.
But then to what length, Mr. Benjamin, are these issues regulated? Because clearly, if then they are, say, for example, illegal foreign nationals who are employed there, definitely you are likely to have them vulnerable to unfair labor practices, isn't it?
Well, that's correct. I think the difficulty is because of the arrangement. So Shoprite Checkers cleverly has structured this arrangement whereby they have another company called Pingo, who's allegedly the owner or the contractor dealing with this motorbike drivers who are delivering goods. But in doing that Shoprite Checkers is not liable for any damages or any losses or any labor costs or obligations in terms of the South African labor laws. So that needs to be addressed. We as Fedusa have been involved through our Social Dialogue Institute, NEDLAC, in dealing with many of these challenges. It's very, very broad. It's not only Checkers, there's Pick n Pay, ASP, there's Uber Eats. There's a lot of them that's growing in South Africa, of which we call the platform economy or the gig economy. That is a worldwide phenomenon. Millions of workers around the world has now been contracted on this basis. So there's no job security, no benefits, and you are purely at the mercy of the market. So the International Labour Organization, the ILO, has taken note of it and view this as a very serious crisis for decent work worldwide. So South African government has done a lot. We have to commend the Department of Labour for many of the efforts that they've introduced to protect vulnerable workers. But this one is a new phenomenon that needs to be tackled on a very urgent basis. And our problem with our government, particularly Department of Labour, is they have very good policies, but the implementation thereof, it's a huge problem. Some of the issues is the lack of persons power, not enough inspectors to investigate and to ensure compliance. So that is a serious issue. The other problem is the Department of Home Affairs. They are the agency responsible for issuing permits to foreign nationals. But there's a very clear criteria that if you have a certain skill or if our economy require a very certain skill, then you are at liberty to issue work permits to foreign nationals. Now, my question is, what skills do you need to drive a motorcycle? Yes, you need to have a license. You need to have certain skills or how do you behave and handle the motorbike. But there are millions of unemployed youth in South Africa that can be trained and be subsidized to earn decent income and ultimately reducing the unemployment rate in South Africa. We've also heard that there is South African young graduates that attempted to apply through Checker 6060 to become this motor vehicle drivers, but they have been unsuccessful. So whilst we acknowledge that this new app has made millions of South Africans' lives very easy because you don't have to go out of your house to shop. You can just now shop online and within an hour it will be delivered. But you should see the conduct of these motorbike drivers on the road. Just this morning on the road, I've seen two of them check a 60-60, jump a red traffic light. I mean, this is dangerous. It's not endangering their lives, but also the public at large. And this is the circumstances that they work under, that they are so pressed and under pressure that they don't even care about their own safety and the safety of other South Africans. It must be addressed as a matter of priority.
And talking about South Africans, Mr. Benjamin, how do you ensure fair labor practices and protect local workers' interests amid all this story that is taking shape as we see it playing out on the roads on a daily basis?
Well, it's simple. We are calling on all these app companies, whether it's Shoprite Checkers, 6060, or Pick n Pay, ASAP, Uber Eats, or any other platform user, to do the right thing, be patriotic, and employ South African labor. It is the right thing to do. We have a crisis of unemployment, poverty, and inequality in South Africa. Do your duty as a South African-based company to employ South African labor. And we will put the pressure on both these companies and the Department of Labor, and we want to see serious action being taken very shortly.
As we mentioned earlier on, that we have open lines for viewers to participate on this show, and we have Daniel from Limpopo. Daniel, what is your take on this story? All right, it seems we're trying to establish that connection there. Coming back to you, Mr. Benjamin, I mean, wouldn't you say these are some of the issues that could potentially cause conflicts among the locals and foreign nationals, as we have seen these incidents in the past where, you know, local residents saying that foreign nationals are taking jobs from them? Wouldn't you say these are some of the issues that could actually lead us to that point where, you know, conflicts continue to simmer in some of these communities amid this high unemployment rate?
Okay, let me make it very clear that from our side, we are not xenophobic at all. Our fight is not against our fellow African brothers that is in our country to see greener pastures or run away from civil wars, whatever the case may be. But I'm sure there is a level of responsibility on all of us, government, South African businesses, to acknowledge that we have our own problems in this country, and that is unemployment, inequality, and poverty. How do we address these social challenges? And how do we ensure that many more millions of youth don't fall into crime and cause more destabilization of our society, increasing the crime? That is why we have to be very clear that we have to have a bias towards South African labor. And the point I'm making, once again, it does not require skills. Let me take another example for you. The hospitality industry. Here we refer to all the restaurants. If you look at all the restaurants, they predominantly employ foreign locals. Now, you tell me, what skills do you require to work in a restaurant? No insult to any worker. Workers are workers. We acknowledge the role that they play in the economy, but there is absolutely no reason why South African restaurants should have a bias for foreign labor and not employing South African labor. The only reason is to exploit and to maximize profits. And that should be addressed. But there's new laws coming, as you know, the national labor migration laws that will address this. And it's basically saying we are not xenophobic. We're basically looking after the interest of South African labor, growing the South African economy, creating stability in a better society for all.
And you're talking about, you know, the upcoming events that are going to be addressing these issues. What sort of solutions, Mr. Benjamin, do you propose as Fedusa to have this addressed once and for all?
Well, the amendment is clear. In fact, some time ago, there were talks about quotas. In some quotas, some people believe that we should implement quotas, which means that a particular industry or employers should only employ a certain amount of foreign labor, but it should be biased towards South African workers. But that has changed recently. It just says that if the skill is in South Africa, then employers must employ South African labor. Only if that skill is not available in South Africa should employers be allowed to source that skill from another country. I mean, that's as simple as that. We need to look after our own interests first. And we are not insensitive when we're saying that we've got a huge unemployment crisis in our country.
And we have Deborah on the line, Mr. Benjamin, who will actually give us her view on this. Deborah, welcome to Week in Review. Just talk to us, what do you make of these developments in this story?
Yes, sir. I think this development on the store is fantastic due to the fact of poverty and need to invest on some employment, even if it's a day-to-day basis of employment. I feel Checkers and Nahum are doing a fantastic job when it comes to 60 seconds, because some of us people have disabilities, and as a single mother, I cannot go out to ShopRite every day or Checkers. That delivery is creating job opportunities in poverty. I'm not exactly sure what's happening, but I'm actually thinking these people as a group or a company are doing fantastic. So let's make something happen like this for many as the average man in the street. Yes?
All right, Deborah, thanks so much for your input there. And because of time, Mr. Benjamin, we also have to thank you for taking your time to give us your thought in this important story. We will be watching it closely as the day go by. Thank you so much indeed. And you at home, you are still watching a Week in Review here on the SABC News channel. Don't go anywhere. Please do stay with us. The news will continue at the top of the hour. You're watching SABC News live from Johannesburg. Your headlines this hour. The lead investigator in the Senzu Meyiwa trial says Kelukumalo is the 6th suspect in the soccer star's murder and should have been charged already.
The message I impart is unity, togetherness. We are the village that the future will look back to and either praise or look back in lamentation.
Newly inaugurated President of Botswana, Advocate Duma Boko, says his priority is to push for better economic growth and address unemployment. Residents fight respiratory issues amid New Delhi's rising pollution levels in India. You're still watching Week in Review live from our studio here in Johannesburg. You can participate, share your comments or ask your own questions by giving us a call here in studio on 011-714-0680 or 81 or 82. It's an honor to have you with us. Newly elected President of Botswana, Advocate Duma Boko, says his priority is to push for better economic growth and address unemployment. Boko spoke during his inauguration in Gaborone in Botswana.
A day of celebrations as the transition in Botswana takes shape. It's now becoming a tradition for the opposition parties that have won elections to invite some opposition leaders in the SADC region.
What an important day for SADC, for Africa. This is a good thing, a new order, new Africa. You can see democracy is on the move in the region, on the continent.
It's a very historic day. I think it's a truly special, and I celebrate democracy. It's a new dawn from Botswana. Let's continue the work that we've been doing.
The EFF leader Julius Malema was not going to miss this historic day after one of the former leaders of the party abandoned the red beret.
We are here to celebrate democracy in action in Botswana, and that there is no any other issue that is happening in South Africa which can destabilize the organization from coming to observe this moment. and respect the people of Botswana. We come a long way with the president of Botswana, and we've gone through the trenches together, and we're not going to miss this opportunity.
South African Deputy President Paul Mashatile was also there representing the country.
We are here to support. We are very happy that the elections have gone very well here in Botswana, and today they will inaugurate their new president, and we're looking forward to working with them.
Former President of Botswana, Mokgweetsi Masisi, called on Botswana to support the new president, and Festus Mogae was happy to be there. Another former Botswana President, Ian Khama, who earlier announced that he was going to focus on his responsibility as the chief, was also present.
I, Juma Gideon Boko, do swear that I will faithfully and diligently discharge my duties and perform my functions in the high office of the Republic of President of the Republic of Botswana.
The moment that cemented the authority of the new Commander-in-Chief and his Vice President was there.
It is an extraordinary season. Let me call it a season. It's a season where the people of Botswana have discovered that they have the power. They have discovered that the country belongs to them, and they have reclaimed their country. It is a season where the people of this country have decided that it is their turn to build their own country.
A message from the Commander-in-Chief.
The message I impart is unity, togetherness. We are the village that the future will look back to and either praise or look back in lamentation. Let's send our roaring voices into the future to be the wind beneath our sails. Let's carry those who came before us, those we have today, and those who will come after us.
Sophie Mukwena, SABC News, Gaborone, Botswana.
It's a growing health crisis that has townships nationwide in its crosshairs. An unchecked rat population spreading disease and death is led to the frantic use of rat poison and the misuse of illegal practices, including organophosphate, in the current wave of tragic child death from eating snacks that are tainted by these illegal substances.
In the dead of the night, the clawing, scratching or squeaking sounds not only leaves you startled, but could cost you a peaceful sleep. Fear has gripped the Outreachville community as they battle a devastating rat infestation. The rodent infestation has pushed residents to the brink, with some resorting to potent and deadly poisonous substance to keep rodents at bay, and at times a serious risk to their health and those of their children.
For abantwana, I'm very careful.
When I use this poison, I'm very careful because I have children. Because I put this poison at the back of the stove and others under the TV stand so that the children can't reach it. At the back of the wardrobe, and I place it where children cannot reach it.
There are just too many rats. We don't even know what to do. The big rats don't come into the house, but they're dangerous. Even cats are afraid of them. We've always known cats to attack rats, but the cats are afraid of these kind of rats. We don't know what to do.
Community members trap the rats with poison, and dogs eat the poison and end up being sickly. My dog is now sick because it has eaten a poisoned rat.
According to toxicologists, common rat poison contain toxic substances that can be harmful to humans if ingested. These substances include anticoagulants and neurotoxins.
Well, the toxicity of rodenticides can vary depending on what is ingested and how much is ingested. There can be severe complications of toxicity, which includes renal and hepatic failure, as well as permanent neurological damage and even death. Common symptoms also range from the anticoagulant-induced bleeding to neurological and also even metabolic disturbances.
Poor waste management and hot weather conditions create a breeding ground for the rats to multiply and spread. The rats survive off food waste, which provides an abundance of nutrients, enabling them to thrive. This in turn increases the risk of diseases transmission, as waste can harbor pathogens that rats can spread to humans directly or indirectly.
We're talking here about diseases such as leptospirosis, hantavirus, and salmonellosis, which are associated with rats and can pose serious public health risks. Unfortunately, once rat populations establish themselves, they are very difficult to eradicate, unfortunately. Rats are highly adaptable and can become resistant to conventional poisons and traps.
A leading authority on pest control recommends exploring alternative methods to eradicate rat infestation.
So the rat infestation in those informal settlements is huge. And the only way to get rid of rats is rats are there for three things. They've got shelter, they need food, and they need water. So that's what we find in formal housing. If we block up the roof space, we've taken away their shelter. We've taken away the warmth, because normally they will go and lie on top of the geyser, because the geyser is always nice and warm because of the water. That's always where you see all the rat poo on top of the geyser. And the food. So we recommend that people put food into your dog food. Put it in a steel container. Don't just leave it outside in a plastic container. Don't leave dog food out in the open.
Rat infestation is a serious challenge throughout the country. A comprehensive long-term solution is needed.
The rats live on rubbish. So in the informal settlements, and I mean, I understand the issues because the trucks can't get in there. It's not a planned part of the city, and there's multiple issues that come out of this. But you've got to take the rubbish away.
Experts have cautioned that rats harbor lethal diseases, leptospirosis, salmonellosis, and tuberculosis. They are transmissible through contaminated water, food, and surfaces, a lethal combination that has led government stumped. Nonhlanhla Ntshingela for SABC News, Pretoria.
The lead investigator in the Senzu Meyiwa murder trial has told the High Court in Pretoria that Kelly Khumalo is the sixth suspect in the soccer star's murder and was due to be charged as far back as 2020. However, while Brigadier Bongani Geninda says he applied for a warrant of arrest, it was not authorized. Meyiwa was shot and killed while at Khumalo's parental home in Vosloorus on Gauteng's East Rand. 5 men are currently on trial at the High Court in Pretoria for his murder. While Geninda previously testified that Khumalo was in communication with accused number 5 Fisokuhle Ntuli, he told the court that there is a communication link between the singer and the alleged shooter accused number 3 Mtobisi Mncube.
There was a link between accused number 3 and Kelly Khumalo. That's the information that it did not disclose to court, according to him. I just want to follow that statement.
Are you able to explain, sir?
Yes, my lord. What I can explain is that the statement that I saw, and if it needs be, we can get to it and I can read it verbatim. There is the statement of Kenneth Stein links accused 3 with Miss Kelly Khumalo. That's the essence of it. As to how we put his terms, that's the part that I don't want to misquote him. But what is clear is that there's a link with Miss Kelly Khumalo and accused 3.
Engakusho-ke kune-statement mhlawumbe singasibheka-ke kuso statement ke ngoba-ke angifuni ukuthi ngisho-ke into angayishilo kodwa nje ngamafishane nje ukuthi-ke iyasho-ke ukuthi khona-ke ukuhlanganisa noma-ke umsolo wesithathu kanye noMiss Kelly Khumalo.
Yeah, but what is of concern to this court was that statement discovered?
Yes, my lord. It's the statement
to the defense also.
Yes, it's a statement that was attached in the docket.
Wait. Let's understand each other. Take it slow. Because if you haven't discovered that information, you can't use it now. But the law allows you. If you have discovered all the information you are testifying about,
Yes, my lord.
and you are able to say it was discovered, this is the information. But if you're not able to say that, I can't take that information. Are you with me?
I'm with you, my lord. What I know, my lord, the state statement was signed, attached in the docket, and it was disclosed.
Move forward. However, if political parties are going to want to shine out of it, it's going to create a bit of a problem for the GNU.
Professor, what do you make? What's your assessment of our capabilities in this regard in terms of intelligence gathering?
If Lusikisiki has always been identified as a hotspot, why is it that he has never informed a strategy or any activity that would talk to that revelation of Lusikisiki?
In terms of if there's any deadlock within cabinet, just help us or viewers understand, is it the president that will always break that deadlock?
Setting up standards, setting up principles, and agreeing on those principles is what will make this government move forward. However, if political parties are going to want to shine out of it, it's going to create a bit of a problem for the GNU.
Welcome back. Staying on international news, in the U.S., Republican Donald Trump defeated Vice President Kamala Harris in what was a hotly contested and sometimes volatile election. Now the world is waiting with bated breath to see what policies Trump will be signing into law, what his plans are for the U.S. economy, and how they will in turn affect economies around the world. Trump has always pledged to defend U.S. interests by implementing policies that are firmly America first, and has forcefully expressed this feeling during campaign season.
The re-election of Donald Trump is expected to change the U.S. foreign policy. We'll recall that Donald Trump seems to be more inward-looking, so his attitude towards global politics will be interesting. The relationship with Africa is very likely to decrease because during his presidency from 2016, Trump has always been hostile towards African leaders. In particular, he even made some derogatory remarks about them. So we think that the relationship with Africa is going to be problematic, or maybe for now it is uncertain. But also, we don't know how Trump will relate to China's expansion in the African continent. How he's going to deal with that, because China and U.S. have a very difficult relationship. Mainly for South Africa, we don't know what is going to happen to the Africa Free Trade Agreement, which is AGOA, whether we are going to be included in this new AGOA. Because throughout his campaign, Trump has been advocating for protecting America. Like I said earlier, that he seems to be more inward-looking. So his outside or his foreign policy or global politics will be interesting to see. In terms of the AGOA, there are many products that are involved in this agreement. I think in South Africa, about 700 products that are part of this free trade agreement. So if this free trade agreement is not renewed, or if South Africa is not included in the new AGOA, so those 700 products we shall suffer in terms of not selling those 700 products to America. And also the issue of the G20. South Africa is going to chair the G20 and America will chair the G20 after South Africa. But there is an indication that Donald Trump will attend the G20 meeting in South Africa in 2025. How that will pan out, we don't know. Another issue that is going to be of interest in Trump's presidency towards South Africa in particular is the South Africa stance about Israel over Gaza. That might cause problems for us. We don't know how that will work. And again, also the climate issues. Remember, after 2016, Donald Trump, the US left the Paris Agreement on climate change. So we don't know what his stance will be in terms of climate change. So those are the few issues which I think will be interesting in Donald Trump's presidency. But I can simply say that for now, everything about Donald Trump's presidency is uncertain.
Interesting thought there by economist Precious Lugayeni. Indeed, we are now welcoming our guest, Dr. Lebombo, who is a political analyst, to help us unpack this story. This week, Dr. Ndo, we saw President Donald Trump being elected as the new president in the USA. What are your thoughts on this pertaining to global politics? Welcome to the Week in Review.
Good afternoon to you. Good afternoon to the viewers at home. Quite expected. Donald Trump has made indications quite earlier that he will still be willing to contest for the US presidency. And the ground, in my view, was quite fertile for his campaign. And what he did was to go to most areas where Harris could not be able to go, and also to ensure that he does not only use the mainstream media. What he has been using also was the use of podcast, and also to ensure that there is sufficient resources for his campaign. Even though there are those who say this was a neck on neck, I don't think so. Harris came very late onto the race, and that actually gave Donald Trump a lot of advantage. But what we need to expect is that Donald Trump is going to put an emphasis on what he did in his first term. He is going to reintroduce patriotism and talk more about America and Americans, and try to fix issues that would appear to be affecting ordinary Americans every day, and issues that Americans are talking about on a daily basis. So he will try to ensure that he associates himself with Americans, and mainly on issues affecting them on a regular basis.
Quite interesting, Dr. Ndo, because there's just no doubt that his victory will have economic consequences for the rest of the world. But his America First foreign policy could see a withdrawal of U.S. involvement in areas of conflict around the world. Do we see situations globally worsening due to this?
There are instances where, in my view, Trump would want to undo what Joe Biden has done, or maybe he will also try to outshine him. But whether you have got Republicans or have got Democrats, the stance of Americans in many instances remains the same. His position is very clear that he still sides with Israel, which is what we saw with the previous administration. But he has vowed that he's going to ensure that he has to end the war in Gaza. But what therefore becomes very important would be his approach towards his foreign policy, and in particular, countries like those that are in Africa, which includes us. And as we know, you might not easily get a clear standpoint on Trump on matters relating to this one. And that could create a possibility where necessary, we might be forced to adjust and reconsider how we relate with countries like America now that Trump is back and is in charge.
Dr. Ndo, I want us to dwell on Trump's tariff plans, which is quite an interesting story here, because most economists dismiss these tariff plans as ill-conceived, and they have the potential to head South African exports more widely to the U.S. as well as worldwide because of the ripple effects on the global economy and trade. What would be the best way to tackle this?
One of the biggest concerns and indeed worries that we have as South Africa are issues relating to trade relations and in the main the AGOA agreement. And my view is that even though we could be suspicious of Donald Trump as an individual or as a person, I think there are many other areas where, as the president, he would also have to get advice and also seek relations with other countries, because even when you talk about building your own economy, it also thrives and survives based on how you also relate with other countries. It will also depend on how then, as African leaders are responding to Trump as a comeback leader in the US. So because there is no clear policy directions or lines that could be articulated by Trump, maybe we should still have to adopt the wait-and-see attitude and therefore try our own strategies on how do we maneuver and fit into his plans, provided at the end of the day we remain beneficiaries.
I just wanted to go back to the election campaigns, Dr. Ndou, which I think quite important. And I think this is a question on everyone's mouth. Where did the Democrats get it wrong? And you mentioned earlier on that Kamala Harris came in late. I wonder if there could be other factors that could have actually, impacted heavily on their outcome.
The first point remains the one that Kamala Harris came very, very late. And my view is that if Joe Biden could have not even started the race, maybe the strategy could have been different and the preparations could have also been thorough. But also there could have been a perception on the part of the Democrats that we're fielding a female and it's a foregone conclusion that most female could support this candidate. But at the same time, there's also a big worry about the voter turnout, which in the view of most people is that maybe Harris could have made it. But unfortunately, these are issues that we only raise after the elections. This could be time for the Democrats to go back and do a reflection and see how they can be able to come back. What is unavoidable is that Donald Trump is now the president of the US, and whatever strategies that come up that has to be developed, it should actually wait for the next 4 years.
Indeed, and talking about Trump, Doctor, I mean, the U.S. election outcome with Trump winning himself has led to notable volatility in the South African rand. We saw as much as 2.5% of its value erased on Wednesday. Should we be worried?
I think we should be worried because I think there is an element of anxiety and not being sure about what the future holds for us. And my view is that it is in the hands of our politicians to ensure that as leaders, they need to be able to adjust, find better strategies of ensuring that the situation that we are in becomes better. And if indeed there are areas where there could be amendments in terms of our relations, that is the responsibility that our leaders are supposed to be venturing on. But mainly, we still need to be very patient and wait for the plans that Trump is going to outline and therefore develop our strategies based on what we have on the table.
I mean, we saw President Cyril Ramaphosa congratulating him and saying that he hopes that he would come and attend the G20 next year. Do you think there are chances of him not coming through, though?
Leaders of states have got a responsibility to ensure that they create a friendship with other states, ensure that there is a conducive environment for diplomatic relations and economic relations. And I think what President Ramaphosa did was to start by extending his hand to Donald Trump as a sign of friendship and acknowledgement. And those are the small things that matters in diplomatic relations. And this could create a possibility of very good relations between South Africa and the US.
Indeed, and Trump has made it very clear, Doctor, on during the campaign trails that he believes major changes to U.S. foreign policy are necessary. What do those policies mean for us as South Africans?
Well, it will depend on how positive or how negative those policies could be. There is a view that's to suggest that Trump has little to do with Africa, and my view is that he could have a lot to do with Africa. The influence that America would love to extend, which is what they've been enjoying all the time, would also require extending relations with many countries, including countries in Africa and South Africa. And therefore, it will require a lot of adjustment and moving in a pace that has a potential to accommodate everyone. But what we also need not to forget is that South Africa and many other countries remain sovereign, and we also have to be able to determine our own destiny. What we need to avoid is a situation where, as South Africa, we might end up being bullied and be taken from one corner to the other by these superpowers. Of course, we do benefit from the relations that we have, but we need also to be able to keep our sovereignty and ensure that we're able to maneuver and play in the bigger league with other countries.
Dr. Ndo, thanks so much for your contribution as always. That was political analyst Dr. Levi Ndo talking to us about President Donald Trump being elected as President of USA once again and what that will mean for global politics and economy. Do stay with us. We will be right back. Welcome back. Various media reports and human rights groups say the death toll following protests in Mozambique could be as high as 30. The uprising has seen a crackdown by police in the neighboring country. Officials in Maputo have denied reports that they have shut down the network, saying they've only restricted it due to fears of disgruntled politicians fomenting violence. Anger has mounted since election authorities said Frelimo won the October 9th vote, extending its 49 years in power. Right, so South Africa closed the Lebombo border post entry to and from Mozambique after 15 officials from the Renzano-Garcia border fled to SA for protection on Thursday morning. Mozambique's main port halted talking cargo after election unrest this week. We are joined now by security expert at Risk Recon, Dr. Petros de Kock, to speak further about this situation. Dr. de Kock, welcome to Week in Review. Thanks so much indeed for joining us. United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Turk, has expressed alarm at the deteriorating situation from a security standpoint of view. Just how volatile and vulnerable are these situations as you see them?
Good afternoon, and thank you for the invite, and afternoon to the viewers as well. Look, this is a tragic situation unfolding in our very important neighboring state for many reasons. Firstly, I think just for the viewers, I'm sure some have been following the story, but immediately following on the election, I think a lot of the protest and violence that we're seeing now was brought, for example, the EU election observer mission to the country indicated some of their observers weren't allowed into tabulation processes at the district or provincial level. There were unjustified alteration of election results at the district, provincial, and maybe even at a national level. So from a political point of view, that's the immediate spark now that's led to this. But the danger in this is that Mozambique is very important economically. South Africa is very heavily invested in the country with critical infrastructure also that feeds our energy system, etc. But more importantly than that is the dynamic inside Mozambique. We must remember they've got a population of, say, roughly 35 million people. And the African Development Bank, I just looked at it quickly this morning, indicates that about 24 million people in Mozambique live in poverty, classified as poverty. So this means the social frustration built up in the society, and especially the younger generation that we're seeing on the streets now, is really transforming this now into a very dangerous, I would say, moment of instability in Mozambique. So we cannot underestimate it at any level.
I mean, the High Commissioner there as well saying that, the police must refrain from using unnecessary or disproportionate force. We have seen video footage of police firing tear gas into residential buildings, for example. Are these protests fast becoming a human rights issue?
Well, I think it is already. If I also tried to get an accurate number earlier on in terms of the unfortunate number of people who've been killed so far. 30, I've seen another number of about 34, hundreds injured, of course, more hundreds arrested. That we're also not very clear about the situation of the people that's been arrested. So I think a very heavy-handed and a militaristic response by the government. But now we must also understand that, and I'm very careful to say this and hesitant to say this from a security point of view, but the Mozambican state is very fragile, actually. Since the peace that was brokered between Renamo and Frelimo, Mozambique has maintained a relative level of stability. There's been investment into the economy, etc. However, I remember many years ago, I think this is around 2010, 2011, I did a lot of work in the Tet province where they were opening tremendously big coal mines, with Vale and Rio Tinto and companies like that. And one of the national arteries that run from Maputo all the way up into the north, there in one route, one would say, was on an ongoing basis prone to banditry, prone to small armed groups launching attacks. And then you have the Cabo Delgado Islamist insurgency. So when you add that to the picture, if the Mozambican state and government at this point in time is being challenged and its stability is being challenged by this high level of extreme public anger being expressed, and then the response by the security system, that's going to open a whole new can of worms in terms of the potential for more instability. Because let's be frank, for an insurgent, for a terrorist, an unstable or an increasingly unstable state is a great opportunity to force its agenda, to push into more territory, etc. So this could have the makings of a very bad perfect storm from a risk security point of view in Mozambique, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, fear is quite palpable in the street, especially those who are on the other side, this side rather, of the border, and asking questions like, could that spread into South Africa? And what then happens, Mr. de Kock, in terms of Mozambique's and South Africa's international human rights obligations then?
Well, SADC, for example, SADC, they are planning to hold the SADC Extraordinary Organ Troika meeting on 20 November. It's too late. It's too late. I'm sorry, but SADC is really dragging its feet to give at least any semblance of the regional body to take a certain position or take certain steps. Now, I'm going to use another African example. I know we're not talking about Sudan, but it's like the tragedy that's been unfolding in Sudan for more than a year now. And quite frankly, the African Union, IGAD, the parties, the multilateral parties that are supposed to be putting pressure on and mobilizing support to reach some form of stability, or at least put a damper on the conflict in the Sudan, is not happening. So honestly, our African platforms, they're not shaping at all at this stage. And the danger for South Africa, I really underline this, is that if this situation perpetuates itself, we're dealing with refugees that will be coming into Mozambique, Eswatini, into South Africa, of course. that makes our border, already we have a porous border, but that will make our border situation even more insecure, put more pressure on our institutions to absorb people fleeing instability in Mozambique. And remember what I said earlier, that of 35 million people, African Development Bank says 24 million of those live in, one could basically say, abject poverty. So if you now destabilize the society in this kind of a way, then the risk is very real for us in the region, that we will have to absorb people from there. And really, we don't need to reach that kind of point at all. South Africa played a tremendously big role after brokering the peace. The peace was brokered between Renamo and Frelimo that ended the civil war. I think Sasol, for example, was one of the first major investments into Mozambique, which played a tremendous role in helping the nascent state there to establish itself, etc. So South Africa will have to play, I think, quite a major role at all levels in bringing the necessary parties together, getting the right kind of intervention in place to broker some form of solution here. And we must also, and I'm also cautious to say this, but the Frelimo government has not been innocent of grand corruption and even criminality. For example, in the last week, there's been protest marches in Mozambique, not just about the elections, but, for example, unemployed graduates, a very similar phenomenon that we have in South Africa. A march by doctors about working conditions and pay, for example. A few other days ago, people were protesting about the kidnapping of business people, like what we have in South Africa. So what I'm trying to say is, this pressure that's been building in the society over a long time now, is that pressure valve is now beginning to release that pressure, and it does not bode well, not only for Mozambique, but for especially South Africa and the region. Because remember, Mozambique also facilitates, in your introduction, you indicated the main port has been closed. But remember, Mozambique logistically feeds not just into South Africa. We export through Mozambique, some of our companies, but also the movement of goods and services to Malawi, to Zambia, even deeper into Central Africa, to the DRC from the Mozambican coast. So we cannot afford a growing instability in Mozambique at all.
And Doctor, we have already mentioned in that intro that, we are hearing reports saying that at least 30 people have already lost their lives. But then the Mozambique Bar Association also warning that there are conditions for a bloodbath, quote unquote, as heavy security presence was deployed across the capital, Maputo. From a security standpoint, how do you gauge a situation that has the potential to unravel based on the type of security deployment there?
No, I think it's very clear. I think there's a statement that's been made. I'm not sure exactly who in the government made the statement, kind of saying that what we are witnessing now is like an attempt at a coup to unsettle or to destabilize the constitutional foundation of Mozambique. And of course, one would expect the ruling party to make a statement like that. But I think, in terms of intervention, the major issue that needs to be resolved is how do we deal with the election results, the dispute. Venancio Modlane, one of the leaders, I think, of Podemos, one of the parties, he is extremely vocal, calling for these protests. And I think that's also another matter that now needs to be handled politically. Okay, fine, we know there's a tremendous amount of anger, but now we really need to go back to the fundamentals of the numbers. And I think for Frelimo, they cannot just draw a military line around this. They will have to engage politically, and they will have to find some kind of accommodation with the opposition parties. If they're not willing to do that, then the scenario that you were just talking about becomes unfortunately more real, because they've shown their intentions. We're going to deploy the forces of violence of the state against the people, who I think at this point in time have very legitimate reasons to be out on the street. That's the bottom line.
It's a story that continues to make headlines, and indeed we appreciate your time, Dr. That security expert, Dr. Petrus de Kock from Risk Recon. But on the line we have a SABC News reporter who has been watching this story quite closely. Nhlanhla Chele. Nhlanhla, can you just tell us, we understand that you left the area, that part of the border at this stage. Can you just take us through what you saw there earlier on?
Good afternoon to you and to the viewers of
All right, it looks like that line is not quite clear. We will come back and re-establish that connection. Let's take you to a short break. We'll be right back on that story, a very important story at that border at this stage. Welcome back to the Week in Review. Now we're going back to this developing story. The Lebombo border post has reopened after urgent talks between South Africa and Mozambique. The border had been closed due to election violence in Mozambique, causing major disruptions. Businesses on both sides suffered heavy losses during the closure. SABC News reporter Nhlanhla Chele is on the ground. In fact, she's just returned from that side of the border, watching the situation there and joining us live. Nhlanhla, can you just take us through what has the situation been there at the border at this stage?
Good afternoon to you, Mahiketla, and to the viewers at home. Indeed, as you correctly mentioned, the port of entry has been officially opened. Trucks are moving, cars are moving, people are moving. We also saw street vendors have also returned. If you remember correctly, during the week when the port of entry was closed, Mahiketla, they had to leave because there was nobody to sell their food to. I mean, we spoke to some of them earlier who were also trying to make sales during the week by coming and cooking, saying to us that their food would get rotten because nobody was coming to buy. But however, they are happy to see that the border is open and people are starting slowly again, Mahiketla, to come back and start buying the food. We also spoke to the Lebombo Taxi Association, which is an association of taxi drivers that moves people who come from Mozambique and move to other parts of the country from the port of entry. They're also saying that they also lost a lot of money in the last couple of days where the port of entry was closed. So they're also quite happy that the border is open and they are seeing people are coming. I mean, the association guy told us that in a day they make trips around 3 or 4 times just to move from the port of entry to Johannesburg, transporting people to and from the port of entry. And that's not to mention what money or how much money they make with the local sales of people moving to neighboring towns in Nkomazi close to the port of entry. So, Mahiketla, it is confirmed the port of entry is open, trucks are moving. Truck drivers are also saying to us that who have been to Mozambique overnight, saying it's peaceful. The protest action has subsequently died down, but they are hoping that the situation remains. Of course, Mahiketla, because it's the weekend, one now wonders what's going to happen from Sunday evening, if they're going to continue to protest again, maybe on Monday, just to close shop like they were doing during the week to ensure that people who go to work are not going to work. Mahiketla, I mean, they were literally trying to put a standstill at the capital city of Maputo, making sure that nobody goes to work, nobody goes to school. Of course, this was also affecting other smaller villages around Maputo city, Risano Garcia, which also led to the closure of the port of entry by forcing the people to protest closer to the border. So but I can confirm, Mahiketla, the port of entry is open. People are encouraged to go back to Mozambique. South Africans who are in Mozambique are also encouraged to use this opportunity to come back to South Africa. Mahiketla?
And just lastly, Nhlanhla, do you get a sense rather of what was happening on the other side of the border when you were there?
Of course, course, we do get a sense. I mean, some people who have been in South Africa are stranded, wanting to go back home. Other days, they'll tell us they can't get hold of their loved ones because it seems like network or internet on the other side has been blocked. So they were unable to communicate with their loved ones. Just on Thursday this week, we saw a man rushing to the port of entry, wanting to cross to go home because he's getting married this weekend. He was panicking. You know, so in other parts of the country in Mozambique, life was continuing as normal. However, in the other parts or other villages, there were protest actions. We also heard there were silent protests, but the police were against anybody who was going against the political party or the governing party, rather, Frelimo. So we did get a sense that it's quite tense. So now that it's open and now that they're free to go home, they're quite excited. You should have seen what it looked like yesterday at the border. As soon as it opened, we saw them running and rushing to Resano Gasha, you know, excited that they're finally going home. Others who are coming back even today are saying it's calm, it's quiet. Of course, kilometer 4, where trucks get processed, is the one that suffered a major loss, that side of Mozambique, because now trucks are being forced to be processed manually. So now we understand that the Mozambican government is putting measures in place to try and sort out those challenges by bringing in computers. If you remember correctly, that infrastructure was burnt during the week when the border was initially closed. So you can imagine the excitement to be able to finally go home and the excitement of other South Africans coming back home, you know, especially the truck drivers, because we heard during the week that they were being attacked, you know. One of the truck drivers said to us they were actually locked in a warehouse since Monday, you know, for their safety because they were unable to come back. So now you can imagine how they're feeling about being able to be on the road and move. Another aspect, the crime that truck drivers face when they're lining up or queuing just to make it to the other side is also another issue for them because their diesel gets stolen, their trucks get broken into, they get robbed while they're still waiting. So you can imagine the relief they're starting to feel now that they're able to move back with their goods to Mozambique and to South Africa.
Thanks so much, Nhlanhla. That was our reporter, Nhlanhla Jele, looking closely at that Lebombo border post story, and we will definitely be looking into that story as it continues to develop. Now to this. Newly elected President of Botswana, Advocate Duma Boko, says his priority is to push for better economic growth and address unemployment. Boko spoke during his inauguration in Gaborone in Botswana. Our international news editor, Sophie Mukwena, is still in Gaborone and has just done an exclusive interview with the newly elected Botswana President Duma Boko. While still on election news, Mauritius is going to the polls next week. Just how significant are those elections in the region, Sophie?
Well, I think let's start with Duma Boko. Duma Boko spoke to us about this controversial issue of shareholding in relation to the mining, the diamond company in this country. He also spoke to us about the very issue of movement of people in this region. You know, there are challenges in relation to the movement of Zimbabweans to Botswana, and also the issue of a ban on South African products that include vegetables and fruits. And he pointed out that this matter must be resolved. Now, turning to Mauritius, quite important one, because Mauritius, we know, is a financial hub of the region, but also of the continent, and Mauritius is part of SABC. And therefore, the elections are quite important as part of democracy, and we know that relative political stability does assist in terms of strengthening economies of different countries. And I think in that context, the elections in Mauritius are important.
Yeah. I mean, the next to follow will be Namibia also next week. Sophie, we have seen former liberation movements losing popularity and power. Here at home, we saw the likes of ANC struggling to garner votes in the last May election. Just across the border as well, the Botswana Democratic Party, which has ruled Botswana for almost 6 decades, has just been ousted from power. What is likely to happen in Namibia?
Well, Namibia, I think the issue here is whether SWAPO has been able to land from what happens in South Africa, Botswana, but also in Mozambique, in a sense, we don't want a similar situation to prevail in that country. And therefore, I think many people will be watching with keen interest how Namibia is going to go through this very important process, and SWAPO in particular, with the candidate that's very senior, a woman. So there is a big story there also, whether if SWAPO doesn't win, then it becomes even more important. But also it is important if SWAPO is able to win, because you will have a first woman president in that country, and now you will have two women presidents in the region. That is the SABC region. And I think in that context, politically, when you look at gender, when you look at transformation, the elections in Namibia are equally important.
Sophie Mukwena, the SABC News international editor, keeping us up to date on the issues that affect the SADC region as far as politics is concerned. And that's how we wrap it up here at the Weekend Review. From myself indeed, Mariketa Mutlabe, as well as the team of the Weekend Review. We will be back with you tomorrow at Week Ahead. Take care.